Hey everybody, let's talk about everyone's favorite subject. The Supreme Court, the justices on said court, and their decisions. Woo! Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Let's get a little sparkle and pop going on in here, huh? Yeah, we need a little pop and fizz. Oh, too much. Too much fizz. Dial it back. Everyone knows, or at least all reasonable people know, that you can't judge judges based on their race and all that fine stuff. Anyway, Supreme Court decisions are generally where I see people discuss a topic as if they know something while having exactly zero idea of how to examine it. Before I actually looked into the process, I was one of those people as well. So who better to help me bounce my ideas back and forth than my dear old friends, the Young Turks. Take it away, Cenk. Missed you.
Antonin Scalia has just passed away, of course, a Supreme Court justice. Now, he was enormously conservative, but I don't want anybody celebrating his death. That's not what we do. We're the good guys. You wouldn't want anybody celebrating a liberal Supreme Court justice's death, right?
Look at how they frame things over there at the Young Turks. He was extremely conservative, but I don't want anyone celebrating his death. As if being a conservative is an inherently bad thing. As if being conservative is a legitimate reason for people celebrating that person's death. And then he goes on to say, we're the good guys, as if being a liberal is an inherently good thing. So there's already an ideological fixation on display here. We're the good guys, conservatives are the bad guys. It's not like he can just say, I think the liberals are right on this issue and conservatives are wrong on this issue. It always has to be an attack on someone's fundamental moral worth as a human being. And so people now have to find a way to force themselves to agree with the liberal position in order to still consider themselves moral people. This is how the discussion of ideas are stifled, as if disagreeing with someone necessarily makes them less of a moral person than you are. I'm rambling. Moving on.
So, now, on the other hand, right now, the conservatives are busy lionizing him. Oh, what an intellectual! What an incredibly brilliant legal mind! And oh, he was so principled. And the mainstream media, I guarantee you, right now is playing along with that narrative.
You know, it is possible for someone who disagrees with you to also be a brilliant legal mind, principled, and an intellectual. I mean, I disagree with smart people all the time. Just because we disagree doesn't mean they're instantly dumb. Another problem with ideological fixation.
Oh, he was a strict constructionist. He cared about the founding fathers, and he was so principled.
Jesus Christ, Cenk, I've seen you on multiple occasions call Justice Scalia a strict constructionist and how he claims to be a strict constructionist. He isn't and he doesn't. He's what he dubs an originalist. That is to say, that you're bound to the text and what the text meant at the time in which it was adopted. He gives this example all the time. The First Amendment. If you were a strict constructionist, you would interpret the First Amendment to not apply to handwritten letters because all it says is speech and the press. Handwritten letters are not speech or the press, but of course that isn't the case, or what was meant at the time. It protects freedom of expression, because speech does indeed take many forms, and it took many forms back when it was adopted. That included handwritten letters. Scalia believed no such thing.
Okay, we have to be clear on the record right now, whether he's alive or he's passed away, you have to be honest about his record.
And you have to actually know what you're talking about to figure out what the record actually signifies, which we will discover in a moment that you don't. Are you sure that you went to law school and worked as a lawyer? Because I, a 22-year-old nobody with a high school diploma to my name, understand this stuff far better than you do.
He was no such thing. He was an enormous hypocrite.
Try me.
For all my life, and by the way, I am a conservative judicially speaking. In fact, I was in the Federalist Society for a long time, which is a very conservative group in judicial circles. I'm no longer in the Federalist Society, but I still hold a lot of my conservative judicial views.
And what are those? Look, the problem with the judicial branch now is that it is too politicized. Speaking of which, the general topic that people are discussing about Merrick Garland, Obama's current nominee to the Supreme Court, are his politics. Liberals are saying he's too conservative, conservatives are saying he's too liberal, and how those things are going to drastically ruin the country, or how they can finally get all of the things they want. This is the problem. People shouldn't have to care whether or not a justice has personal liberal or conservative views. What you should be looking at is their legal philosophy and how they interpret text. Do they care about the purpose of the statute? Do they honor stare decisis when it suits them and then abandon it when it cuts against them? Do they care about the original meaning of the text? Do they write in new meaning? Do they do legal and linguistic somersaults to save laws that they like? Do they rewrite unconstitutional laws in order to keep them in effect? Or do they simply look at the text, figure out what it means, and then apply it? Because regardless of whether a judge wants text to say what it does, the undeniable fact is that it does say what it actually says and means what it actually means. If a judge cannot distinguish between what the law actually says and what they think the law should say, then in my opinion, they are unfit to be on the court.
Now, I had thought that Scalia was a hero. I'm a Republican, I'm conservative judicially, and I believe in the myth of him being principled, right? And then every once in a while I'd see an opinion, I go, wait a minute, that's the Republican position, but that doesn't make any sense because that goes counter to what Scalia has said in the past. And then I saw it again and again and again. And then I realized, oh my God, Scalia doesn't care about principles. He's going to vote for the Republican side and his own religious beliefs, no matter what the law is, no matter what the precedent is.
Except in Texas v. Johnson, where Justice Scalia joined the majority opinion on the fact that flag burning was protected as a form of expression under the First Amendment, when he personally hated the outcome. Scalia said during an interview with Piers Morgan, quote, "If I were king, I would not allow people to go about burning the American flag. However, we have a First Amendment which says the right of free speech shall not be abridged, and it is addressed in particular to speech critical of the government," unquote. This is easily researchable.
Now, there's literally dozens of examples of this, but I'll give you the most famous one. For all my life, Scalia has been talking about states' rights. The states have rights. Look at the Constitution. We must let the states decide.
In reference to what? See, this is your problem. You give us no context here. There are some things that the states should decide and have a right to decide for themselves, and other things that they may not decide. But with this, you have framed a scenario where unless Scalia votes in favor of quote-unquote states' rights, regardless of the laws they're working with, then he is immediately a hypocrite. Cries of hypocrisy when talking about Supreme Court's decisions is probably one of the stupidest things you can do. Let's say a fictional case comes forward that's making a challenge regarding a law that just states abortion is illegal. Someone gets an abortion, gets arrested, convicted, and then brings a case to the Supreme Court, making a challenge saying that this law actually protects her right to get an abortion. Sorry, case dismissed. The words on the page are very clear. Now, fast forward a few years where citizens were persuaded by their fellow citizens to repeal that law. They voted people in favor of repealing it, and it gets repealed. Then the exact same fictional case comes forward. A woman gets arrested for getting an abortion and all that stuff, then brings the challenge to the Supreme Court. Well, since that law was repealed and abortion is no longer illegal, her conduct is entirely permissible, and so you'd vote in the opposite direction. Is it reasonable to cry hypocrisy there? Of course not. It is entirely consistent. Anyway, that probably doesn't apply to the case Cenk is detailing, but I thought that idea was worth expressing.
And then in Bush v. Gore in 2000, Florida said, we have the right to count any way we like. We want to make sure we recount the state to make sure we've got the right winner of the election. Scalia and the other conservatives stepped in and said, we don't care about states' rights at all. States' rights are irrelevant. Florida has no states' rights. No, you're not allowed to recount.
Yes, that's totally what happened. The Supreme Court said that Florida has no states' rights. Dude, I understand simplifying things, but when you dumbify your language to the point where it distorts what actually happened, it's time to stop. In case you've forgotten, Bush v. Gore was decided 7-2, and Breyer and Souter, both considered liberal justices, joined the opinion that the Florida Supreme Court's scheme for counting ballots was unconstitutional. The 5-4 decision in this case was regarding whether or not a constitutional recount could be fashioned in the time remaining. The issue facing the court in Bush v. Gore was whether or not the Florida Supreme Court violated the Constitution by ordering a manual recount when they did not have the power vested in them to do so. So when you say things like, they said Florida has no states' rights, you can't do a recount, that is precisely not what happened. It was determined that the Florida Supreme Court violated Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution, quote, each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors, equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress, but no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. Now, just to be clear, the Florida Supreme Court is not the legislature of Florida, and the legislature of Florida did not give the power to make recount orders like that to the Florida Supreme Court, thus a violation. See what happens when you actually look into it? It's simple, but a little more complex than, oh, you want states' rights? Too bad, the Supreme Court's up in this bitch now.
Oh, so it turns out you were a giant hypocrite. And we just did a story on another hypocrisy he had just yesterday on the show. He wrote a book explaining how if there are two contradictory laws, you must let the executive branch decide. And then the executive branch comes in with new EPA rulings. He reverses himself from his own book and says, no, you don't let the executive branch decide. No, we're not going to let them decide.
You know what's weird about the Young Turks, and I'm sure a lot of you have noticed this? They have the ability to pick up quotes and read them aloud. They have the editing skills and graphics to pull the quote directly from Scalia's book, I presume his book Reading Law, and give it to us on screen. I don't have the book, your audience probably doesn't have the book either, but in general, whenever Cenk is bringing up someone else's position that he's distorting, he uses very broad language with no shown quote, but if he actually has something, he puts the quote up there, which he's about to do in a little bit, but since he cares not one iota about the context of the case, he'll end up applying his own meaning to the quote in question. Since I don't have Scalia's actual position on the executive in regards to contradictory laws, I'm just going to let him say stuff about the EPA case. I need to buy the damn book. He's so vague, I don't know if he's talking about West Virginia et al. V. EPA et al. Or some other EPA case where there were contradictory laws. He doesn't specify what those laws are. Yeah, this guy who went to law school and was a lawyer totally knows what he's talking about.
The guy just wanted to get to the conclusion that was based on his politics. So whatever you hear on TV is not true in that if they go to say, oh, he was principled. He isn't. Any legal scholar that studied him knows that.
Sometimes legal scholars are wrong. I mean, you definitely are. I hope you don't frame yourself as a legal scholar.
Okay? So there'll be a lot of mythology. Now, I'll give you exact quotes from Scalia to give you a sense of what Scalia was actually like. On a death row case, Troy Davis, there was substantial evidence, according to the court, Justice Stevens, that he was innocent. 7 out of the 9 witnesses had recanted, saying, no, he didn't do it. Here's what Scalia wrote in his dissent. This court has never held that the Constitution forbids the execution of a convicted defendant who has had a full and fair trial, but is later able to convince a habeas court that he is actually innocent. In other words, I don't give a damn that he's actually innocent. If we went through the correct procedure, put him to death anyway.
This is precisely the problem with nearly everyone who discusses the law and the justices in general. The issue is not whether Justice Scalia does or doesn't give a damn. The issue is whether the Constitution does or doesn't give a damn. In any case, the statement was regarding whether or not the court had ruled on whether it is unconstitutional to execute those who have been found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt by a jury of their peers, yet later convince a habeas court that they're actually innocent. Yet you take this and run with it, saying, I don't give a damn if they're innocent, execute him anyway, I'm evil. If evidence was mishandled, obviously there's a problem. If someone proves reasonable doubt in their case, and they're executed, obviously there's a problem. He said nothing about exonerations being impossible in regards to death row rulings. Seriously, give me a break. The way you handled that statement defies all laws of the English language, logic itself, and basic reading comprehension.
That's who Scalia is.
Wow. You're actually standing by that. P.S. Opinions on law are not opinions on morality. In fact, sometimes the law is contrary to what you believe to be moral. But as a judge, it is your job to apply the law, not your will. Basing someone's morality on their interpretation of the law is stupid. Your job is to interpret the law, not say, screw the law if it makes me feel all sad inside. The court is not a legislature or a pulpit.
I've got more quotes for you. What he loved to do is deny other people rights. When it came to his group, oh, no, they have to have all the rights in the world. But when it came to other groups, here was his thought on the LGBT community. Quote, if we cannot have moral feelings against homosexuality, can we have it against murder? Can we have it against other things? Wow.
This, of course, is always taken to be Scalia's comparing homosexual conduct to murder or some such nonsense. However, if you actually read the dissent, he's stating that people are entitled to have moral feelings about things, to include homosexuality. Quote, first, as to its eminent reasonableness. The court's opinion contains grim, disapproving hints that Coloradans have been guilty of animus or animosity towards homosexuality, as though that has been established as un-American. Of course, it is our moral heritage that one should not hate any human being or class of human beings, but I had thought that one could consider certain conduct reprehensible, murder, for example, or polygamy, or cruelty to animals, and could exhibit even animus toward such conduct. Surely that is the only sort of animus at issue here, moral disapproval of homosexual conduct, the same sort of moral disapproval that produced the centuries-old criminal laws that we held constitutional in Bowers." Unquote. Now, just for the record, because I'm saying this does not mean that I am in favor of laws that make homosexual conduct illegal, because I'm not. I think laws like that are reprehensible, but I can still defend Scalia from attacks like this. Bear that in mind before going off on a tirade about how I hate gay people, please.
More. Now, this is when it comes to atheists. With respect to public acknowledgement of religious belief, it is entirely clear from our nation's historical practices that the Establishment Clause permits this disregard of polytheists and believers in unconcerned deities, just as it permits the disregard of devout atheists. He made the unbelievable assertion that the Constitution says, yeah, even though we're not allowed to establish a religion, we are allowed to discriminate against atheists.
Yep, in this case, Scalia was citing historical practices in regards to what the Establishment Clause meant and attempted to distinguish between establishing a religion and public acknowledgement of a religious belief via a statue or whatever. This had to do with the Ten Commandments being displayed on public property in Kentucky. From reading his dissent, it looks like he was referencing this disregard with respect to having the Ten Commandments removed, not discriminating against atheists. People were trying to get the Ten Commandments removed in this case, and you're saying that this is active discrimination against atheists that Scalia is vying for? Next. I don't even have to agree with Scalia on any of these points to prove you incorrect. Now, if the government were preventing atheists from doing their own things, that would be a different story, but that isn't what occurred in this case. You're just wrong on the basics here. All you're doing is throwing out a bunch of quotes that sound bad without taking the full case and context into account.
But when it comes to his own religion, principles be damned, the Constitution be damned, the strict interpretation of the obvious words of the Constitution be damned. He doesn't like atheists. He doesn't like gay people. He's going to rule against them no matter what. This guy had no principles.
You sound like a profound thinker that we should all take seriously.
Now, on the issues of his religious beliefs that he used on almost all the cases in the social realm, here's what he thought about evolution. Quote, the body of scientific evidence supporting creation science is as strong as that supporting evolution. In fact, it may be stronger. How preposterous. He goes on to say, the evidence for evolution is far less compelling than we have been led to believe. Evolution is not a scientific fact, since it cannot actually be observed in the laboratory. Rather, evolution is merely a scientific theory or guess. It is a very bad guess at that. The scientific problems with evolution are so serious that it could accurately be termed a myth.
You bumbling idiot. This quote is from one of his dissents where he's detailing someone else's argument. It says right in the damn dissent. Senator Keith and his witnesses testified essentially as set forth in the following numbered paragraphs. And that statement is in the paragraph numbered 2. You are sticking a dead man with the quotes of someone else and claiming that is their true legacy in your video title. You disgust me. Absolutely disgust me.
So, if you hear on television, which you most certainly will, that this guy was a genius, remember, he was so scientifically illiterate that he thought evolution was a myth and that creation science was the better scientific answer. Where God goes, let there be light, and I will take a rib from Adam and make a woman out of it. He thought that was more likely scientifically than evolution.
Actually, he was detailing Senator Keith and his witnesses' arguments, you fucking dunce.
Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Cenk, you don't run a news network, and you don't even run a sufficient commentary network. You may just be this stupid. If you had read the actual dissent in which Scalia was detailing someone else's argument, you wouldn't have claimed he did it, unless you're just a lying sack of shit, which is a reasonable possibility. Or you just go to your laptop, read the first headline that makes your progressive bias have a miniature orgasm, and then run with whatever the fuck it said. You don't care about the truth. You don't even care if what you're commenting on actually exists. All you seem to care about is LOL dumb Republicans. And that's fine. You can do that. But don't try to distance yourself from any sort of mainstream media publication, because you may actually be worse than they are in some respects. Nearly nothing you have said in this entire video has been factually accurate or given sufficient context, and you actually put the word true in the title of this video. I know bad journalism and research when I see it, and I can point it out. Cenk, I am more intelligent than you are in nearly every aspect of this stuff, and I didn't go to law school. You are so mentally deficient that you actually went to law school and then seem to forget everything you learned there. I'm just some guy who sits down, researches things, and learns all by himself. Now, I'm not one to brag about myself, but simply saying that I'm smarter than Cenk from the Young Turks isn't saying much. Either you're an idiot or you're lying. No matter how old you get, and no matter how much time you spend learning things, I will always learn those things quicker than you will. I will always retain more than you will, and I will always nuke you from orbit if you give me the chance. I don't consider myself an incredibly intelligent human being, but honestly step back and analyze yourself for a few moments. You are being corrected as someone who went to law school and worked as a lawyer on issues regarding the law by some 22-year-old autodidact currently sitting in his sweatpants. Either I'm a genius, or you're an idiot, or you're a liar. I'll stick with the latter two for now. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
But I'm not done yet. One final quote, and this one's about the devil. Quote, "You're looking at me as though I'm weird. My God, are you so out of touch with most of America, most of which believes in the devil? I mean, Jesus Christ believed in the devil. It's in the Gospels. You travel in circles that are so removed from mainstream America that you're appalled that anybody would believe in the devil. Most of mankind has believed in the devil for all of history. Many more intelligent people than you or me have believed in the devil." This guy believes that there is a Beelzebub. He is literal. And for example, right now, he's torturing Mahatma Gandhi because Gandhi did not accept Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. According to Scalia's beliefs, he is in hell being eternally tortured. He literally believes in that devil. So Scalia has passed away. And for his sake, given how many rights he tried to take away from so many Americans, I hope to God that he is wrong about the devil.
Believing in the devil does not immediately surrender one's brilliance in other fields. I don't believe in the devil, and quite frankly, I think it's a bit silly. But this is like saying that someone's physics proof is mathematically inaccurate because they believe in angels. Anyway, it was nice seeing you again, Cenk. It won't happen again in the near future. Trust me. Have a wonderful day.